would have been centre back, wing back, but as I said, I've got older. I've probably played a wee bit more football around the half forward line.
Yeah, and that all makes sense, and it's definitely part of the evolution of the game that I'm not sure we've caught up with when we're talking, particularly in terms of all-stars and positions and the value of each individual performance in every game. It's difficult, particularly because we don't get the live data that you guys get in terms of the number of touches and all that kind of stuff too. So is that how you judge whether or not you've had a good game? It's like the stats that come off, it's the important involvement in the game.
A small bit, people do read a lot into it. Personally, for me, I'm not that massive into the stats and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'll look at it and I'll take everything on board, but I'll know myself after coming off the field if I've had a good game or a bad game. So, and that's sort of how I judge it. I'll ring a lot of people. My father doesn't be long tell me after a game if I play good or bad, and I'm afraid if I tell Dad I had 30 touches of the ball there, Dad, I thought I was doing all right, that means nothing to him. So he doesn't be long tell me if I've had a good game or bad game. But no, I suppose again it's going back to modern day football and stats now, that kind of stuff do play a massive role in it now, don't get me wrong, and I do believe they are important and they have a role to play. But just for me personally, as I said, I'll make my own assumption on who, from myself, if I played good or bad, and if I'm watching a game who I felt played good or bad, I wouldn't really look into the stats, especially ball touches. I think ball touches of the ball can be a wee bit artificial, especially with kickouts the way now. A cornerback could get 15, 20 touches easy just off kickouts if a team's given kickouts and different sort of stuff. So I think that might be a wee bit, not relevant. But I suppose, listen, up the field, I suppose touches the ball, from a centre forward, corner forward would be more relevant, I suppose, to the game.
Yeah, fair enough, Ryan. Great stuff. Enjoy the season. Best of luck with everything. Thanks a million for talking to us again. Cheers.
No problem. Thanks a million. Talk to you soon.
That's Ryan McHugh there. The Allianz Football League was officially launched earlier this week. It's the 30th season that Allianz has sponsored the competition, making it one of the longest sponsorships in Irish sport. And it looks like this weekend is going to be brilliant. We're going to be back with Deal or No Deal.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
He's a Lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
Your passion obviously for the game and the connection you have and the will you want to improve women's football, and just to be able to do that from the inside, because obviously the FAI has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons and you were there during that whole time, but it makes a difference for us to be able to hear from the inside the work that you're doing, because it went under the radar and people only talked about the higher ups and what they were doing to damage the game. But there's so many good people in there, the likes of yourselves, and like say you mentioned some of the people you've worked with along the way that have helped your development. There's so many good people in there that it's good to see that there's restructures. It's good to see people like you getting a chance to kind of just to rebuild that reputation, because it did need a rebuild, but I think we can kind of start to see light at the end of the tunnel. Did it feel like that internally in the FAI? Do you feel like there's a turning point?
100%, Karen. 100%. Since last year, like since Johnson has come in, obviously that was a tough period for us all, and that's I think what used to hurt the most is I knew everybody in the place, and that probably people outside don't know. There's a lot of brilliant, hard-working people that love the Irish game and want the Irish game to do well, and they're nearly painted under the one umbrella. But I think that's happened now. Let's move on. I think we've learned from it. I think the FAI now will be in a better place because of it, which is brilliant. Jonathan has come in. He's been unbelievable. I've met him a few times. Just his knowledge since he's come in of Irish football so quickly has been brilliant. And he's big on the women's game. He's absolutely massive. And I think that's important. It's a whole one association approach now in terms of men and the female game, where in general, the female game is not just an afterthought anymore. Or even, I used to say, it'd be kind of like, we'd be speaking about the men's game and then we'd be like, we might have to do something for the women's game. Just in general, I'm talking about clubs or anything. I just think now the women's game, because the potential of it, everyone now has to just step up and do something. But look, as you mentioned, I'm delighted you mentioned that, because there is a lot of brilliant people in the FAI who do a lot of, incredible work and really care about the game. And I think you'll start to see that now. it's going to take time. The restructure's only in, a year in place. So it's going to take, there's a strategy that's been worked on now, be a women's football development plan coming out, all that sort of stuff that's going in the background that nobody sees, or those programs, or, there's like, I'm one program coordinator, there's 7 more. The country's now split into 8 regions in this new restructure. So you have a regional manager, a program coordinator, and a team of development officers. So just the structure and how we work and all now has just changed completely. And for me, in terms of the women's game, it's only going to help it develop even more, because if you look at participation figures and all, we can be doing better. Of course we can always strive for better, and I think that's important. And I think Jonathan Jer, who runs grassroots, and all the staff, just want to drive it forward now and kind of forget what went on in the past. And everyone loves the Irish game. We're all in the FAI because we love football and we care about it. And I think you'll start to see that now in the next few years, definitely.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
You were listening to Pearl Slattery talking to Kathleen and Karen in this week's episode of the Koi Gig Pod on OTB Sports in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland's women's national team. Full episode is available right now on the OTB Sports app, and you can watch it on YouTube as well. It is time for Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan. Phil, good morning to you. We're starting with Yuri Tielemans, who I think, like, over the last 12 to 18 months, I mean, Leicester are obviously in the top 10 at the moment. Otherwise, he would have been top of Nathan's top 10 players outside the top 10. But they're there by their fingernails at the moment. This guy's got 18 months left of his contract. If you're Leicester City, what do you do? Do you cash in now? Do you try and set an auction up in the summer and maximise as much as you can get? Because he ain't signing a new deal, is he?
No, definitely not. No, I think they'll cash in the summer. And if you're Yuri Tielemans, you're looking around going, this is probably as good as it's going to get. For Leicester, he obviously scored the winning goal in the FA Cup final. They're not going to get Champions League. They obviously went close the last couple of seasons. He's 24. He must be looking around at other teams in the Premier League thinking, I could do some good stuff on those teams. And I'd say some of the bigger clubs are looking at him. He keeps getting linked with Liverpool and Manchester City. But I think most players, it's no harm being linked with Liverpool or Manchester City. It means you're going in the right direction. I certainly think in terms of Liverpool, one position or one unit that has let them down this season is midfield, be it injuries or just probably lack of quality at times, but that probably comes from the injuries. Thiago is meant to be the player in there that controls games, but he just doesn't play enough games, and there's matches where Liverpool have dropped points because they just have lack control in midfield, where I think to the Brentford game away, Spurs away, Chelsea away, what was the other game? The Brighton game at home. Thiago didn't play any of those games, where there's going to be moments in a match where you're under the cosh. You need somebody to put their foot in the ball, slow things down and be able to take the ball in tight spaces, where Liverpool's success under Klopp when they won the Premier League and Champions League was an all-energy midfield that would get the ball back straight away. Thiago was signed to try and change things up, but it just hasn't worked out yet because he's been injured. And you wonder, will Liverpool look in the summer thinking we need to bring in a couple of players to bolster that midfield to get something different in there that and Tielemans would fit the bill. He could slot into the Manchester City midfield no problem. And one thing as well, we've seen, I mentioned his goal in the cup final. He can ping one in from 30 yards.
Is he a 6? Is he an 8? What is he?
I would think probably an 8.
Right.
But you could play him as a 6 in, say, a City team because they have so much possession of the football. So he could play in either position. You could also play him in a 4-2-3-1. So, I think he's a really good
United.
He could play for United.
Would he be cheaper than Rice and a better...
Different type of player, I think, than Rice. I think technically a better player than Rice. Rice probably has a better engine than him. Can probably carry the ball a bit better than them.
How much is he?
I'd say you're looking at 50 million.
That's pretty cheap when Bissouma is 50 million or 40 million.
I mean, these are those two players you mentioned. They're Premier League ready, so you don't have to worry about them not being able to do it in the Premier League if you're a Premier League club.
Okay, so why would somebody not try and tempt Leicester with that now, get that deal done, have them for the rest of this season, so you catapult into next season with everything kind of ready to go?
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if Leicester let him go. I wouldn't be surprised if Brendan Rodgers or the owners had said to him, look, we're not going to let you go in January, so just finish off the season, see what you can do, and we'll let you go in the summer if the price is right.
Is the constant speculation around Brendan Rodgers fueling players not signing new deals at Leicester?
No, I don't think so. I just think Leicester are a very well run club in terms of they spot talent, they develop it, and then they sell them on. And I think if you're players like you mentioned somebody like Tielemans, maybe someone like Harvey Barnes who has signed the new contract, that doesn't necessarily mean that he wouldn't be tempted by a move away. But as I said, I think this is as good as it's going to get for Leicester. They are not going to get that top four spot that they came so close to the last couple of seasons. They're getting further away. Now, they have been plagued by injuries at the back, and there's a reason that they're so far down the table compared to previous seasons, because they're just leaking too many goals. They can't defend set pieces. I think Kasper Schmeichel has certainly his form has dipped. He still pulls off some great saves, but they're just not as solid. And I think last week's game against Spurs was the perfect example of what's going wrong with Leicester, that they just can't do it anymore.
Would Manchester United be in the top three if they had started the season with Yuri Tielemans and Wilfred Ndidi as opposed to Scott McTominay and Fred?
Who's the manager?
Same. Everything else is the same. Just midfield. Take Leicester's midfield.
So you're saying Solskjaer starts as the manager?
Yeah.
Ronaldo has signed as well?
Everything else is the same.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's hard to know, because those kind of players, if they go to a club like Manchester United, there's so much more pressure on them. You can have a bad game for Leicester.
Could McTominay play for Liverpool? If McTominay was in alongside Henderson and another, is he totally fine? Actually quite good?
I actually think so.
And Fred the same?
Yeah, maybe that's the question. How would Leicester have won the FA Cup with... Well, no, Tielemans scores McTominay's got on the end of a couple of goals recently. Like, can he... Maybe...
Is it just that the whole...
I think the point of McTominay and Fred, say, in a three-man midfield playing as your 2/8s, where you're an all-energy midfield, that works better than the way they play with United, where at times it's quite pedestrian and they're expected to run games. That's not... they're athletic players who have plenty of energy. They can hunt, get the ball back for you, and then just feed the attack.
I think Fred could be really good in the right scenario. I think if he goes to somewhere that fully understands how to use him next time, or if a manager comes in and knows how to understand him, I think he's got really good ball skills and seems to have really good energy. It's just that they were playing him as a out and out defensive midfielder in a team that was getting completely destroyed and had no pace in its centre backs for the last 3 seasons. And even still, their centre back situation, Varane is in and out with injuries. Yeah. Very difficult to run that midfield when you're not actually, that's not your skill set. Anyway, sorry.
No, but that sums up what is wrong at Manchester United at the moment. They have all these players, but they just haven't really worked out a system to play, and they've players playing in systems that don't work. And this is what Rangnick has to try and sort out. And if he brings in a new manager, this is what they're going to have to sort out. It's not an easy fix.
Luis Diaz, Porto and Colombia winner, or maybe it's Luis Diaz, I don't know, has clocked up 14 goals in 18 Premier Liga matches. This is a sensational strike rate, right? Man United, Atletico and Dortmund are all linked with him. Spurs are reported to have had a £38 million offer shot down. Is he the next Fernandes-style export from the Portuguese league? Is he ready to go straight in somewhere?
Yeah, Liverpool fans would have got to see him play against them in the Champions League this season. And again, he's been linked with Liverpool because he is your modern day left winger, right-footed inverted winger, where likes to cut inside, quite creative, quite a good finisher, quite a cool finisher, and also plays with his head up and likes to take on a player. has more than 30 caps for Colombia. He's just gone 25. So you would feel now is the time for him to move. Atletico, I wonder would he be tempted by Atletico, where you're not moving to the Premier League, but you're moving to a quality team in Atletico. Again, Porto would have played against Atletico.
It's a big step up, but it's not the physical difference.
That's it. You don't know how he's going to adapt to the Premier League, the pace of it. From what I've seen of him, he's no problem working hard, and he does score some sensational goals as well. And maybe Spurs would be a good move for him. I don't know where he fits into the Spurs system, because obviously Conte likes to play three at the back. He naturally looks like he's set up to play in a 4-3-3.
Okay. Newcastle's advances in Jesse Lingard have apparently been derailed. Sky Sports News report that they believe Manchester United's desired loan fee was unreasonable. They're probably looking at what's happened with Martial and Sevilla, where similar happened, and then no loan fee ends up getting paid, and going, well, hang on, how come? So Nice and West Ham have been linked with the 29-year-old. Where will Jesse Lingard be at the end of the transfer window?
You would think of those two teams, West Ham would make more sense, because he was there last season, and he scored 9 goals in the 16 games that he was there, and likes it there, so much so that he even scored off the bench for United away to West Ham. The winning goal, it was a cracking goal, and he hasn't played. He hasn't started a Premier League game for United this season. But this goes back to what I was saying about United and just a bit of the mess that they're in, where Martial's gone to Sevilla. He's taken a £1 million pay cut to trying to get out of there. So you've got players that are on inflated wages, so it's very hard to clear them. And
the papers tell me that Martial's on 200 grand a week, but Spotrac says he's on 250 grand a week, and he signed a 6-year deal which is worth 78 million, so he can afford the 1 million off this year, on the understanding that actually the contract will just revert back to what it was normally in the summertime.
And he wants to just get out of that environment for a while and try something different. And Sevilla are obviously going well in the Spanish league. They're just a few points behind Real Madrid, and
Lopetegui potentially takes him and then comes back in the summer as the Man United manager and is like, hey, come on, buddy, let's go.
I still have flashbacks at that day that Lopetegui was
walked out in Spain
as we were getting ready for
was he not
sacked?
The
World Cup.
No, he walked out. He was sacked because he took the Real Madrid job and he couldn't do.
He was totally sacked. They could have just kept him there for
Spanish Football Federation getting a bit.
And he was sacked by Real Madrid. But in fairness, he's regrouped. But again, I don't know if that appointment would excite United fans. But then again, maybe it's a sensible option, and United haven't had sensible options the last couple of times.
They got very excited about Jose, and they got very excited about Solskjaer, and no thanks, no excitement.
You know the way you said there, Jesse Lingard hasn't started enough games for Manchester United this season, as a result hasn't got enough goals. The one way he could have altered that is by going to a whiteboard, putting Jesse 3.0 up there and saying targeted appearances 20, targeted goals 9. I bet he didn't do that this season, and as a result that's where we are.
He did actually try it off a bit with West Ham last season, and I wondered when he was flying for them where he was the best player in the world. Not quite, but I wondered, was he just that fresh in a season that
everyone
was quite tired, and he just came in and he was...
Well, it's the same thing could happen this year. He'd get a good contract off the back of that if he was to play some football over the next few months.
Positive attitude, confidence, belief, that's what it was down to quote Jesse Lingard on his whiteboard himself.
I think it would be a good move for both. I think West Ham are, looking at them the last few weeks, they look a bit jaded, and maybe something like Jesse Lingard would freshen them up. And we know that wherever he goes, whatever people think of Jesse Lingard, he is a popular player in the dressing room, and he brings
he was class last year.
A bit of dancing, a bit of energy, and more importantly for West Ham last season, he brought goals.
Hanging out with some controversial rappers as well. We've got about 35 seconds left to go. So the Athletic have an update on Man United's manager hunt. Lopetegui is still in it. Ten Hag and Pochettino, they seem to be the last three in consideration at the moment. Between 1 and 10, how likely is Ranić to become permanent manager at this stage, do you think? And also, who of that three do you want? If you're a Man United fan, not you.
I would say, could you put 0 in for Ranić?
Yeah, fair enough.
And then of the three, Ten Hag is the one, I think. But there again, it's a risk. We know Pochettino's managed in the Premier League, whereas Ten Hag hasn't. But from what we've seen and what he's done with Ajax, he's very impressive. You definitely play football in the right way. But again, as good as Ajax are and the pedigree they have, Manchester United is just a different beast. I just don't know if there's a manager out there in the next couple of seasons that can actually work at Manchester United.
All right, last one, Villa and Joe Gomez. He seems to be further and further down Jurgen Klopp's depth chart at the moment. Does this make sense for both parties, for the three parties involved?
To go to Villa?
Yeah.
Not in January, but the problem for Joe Gomez is Joe Matip. He's played 25 games over the last couple of seasons. Now he's already played 25 games this season. He wasn't meant to be fit, and he's so good that Klopp can't leave him out. And then he obviously signed Konate, so Gomez has gone down again, hasn't started a Premier League game. He's come off the bench 4 times in the Premier League, 3 times 1-minute appearances. The other time, 12 minutes. The only reason? James Milner was walking on eggshells against Manchester City. He was on a yellow and should have been sent off for a second yellow, so Klopp took him off. So that's pretty much, that sums up where Joe Gomez is at the moment. And it's a shame because he was so pivotal to the team that won the Premier League.
Is it also to do with, does Klopp really want to keep him in terms of that versatility as well? That if something ever happened to Trent,
absolutely.
Come in, but he's also been on form and fit as well this season.
Yeah.
If Liverpool want to convince Stevie G, they need to show him a bit of love, give him Joe Gomez on the cheap, and this is that's one in the pocket there when FSG come calling after.
I don't think
that's how it works. Well. Yeah, no Origi, thanks, but Phil, good stuff. That's today's Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training on driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
And Nathan did his top 10 footballers outside the top 10. He left out James Ward-Prowse. That was a minor controversy, but you can expect that when the Southampton fans get a hold of his list, they will flame him today. What's wrong with Marmion? Clearly way ahead of Casey, but not getting picked, says Joe about a rugby chat. You can get that if you missed it on our podcast channel. You just subscribe to OTB Rugby and it'll be there for you. Or of course you can subscribe to the OTB AM feed and get the whole show podcast for you by 10 a.m. every morning. And we are brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Tomorrow morning we're going to hear from Keith Wood. There's Gaelic football ahead of the return of the leagues and much more as well. And we will of course be having AM quick picks every Friday. Is there any chance of an OTB GAA league predictions? There is. Every Friday morning. Quick picks is back. Great to have the leagues back, and there's going to be a huge crowd at these games after seeing the big crowds of the pre-season games. No, there's no money in a good quality, meaningful league. It doesn't matter. We could never fix the problems. Right, here's Andy Mitten on the football show last night talking about the very latest with Man United.
Back to the football show. Joe Malloy with you this evening. Football show as ever is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We've just had Graham Hunter on the show. Now very happy to say Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, is with us. Evening Andy, great to have you on.
Good evening, nice to join you.
We talked a little bit over the last while and it's felt touch grim around Manchester United to say the least. I don't want to overstate things and say a big corner has been turned, but maybe they're beginning to go around a bit of a bend.
Well, 2 wins in a short space of time has lifted United from the 7th up to 4th. Wins are wins. They set the mood completely. I don't care what anybody else says. And even though United have not been playing particularly well, since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer lost his job, United have only lost 1 of 13 games. And 8 of them were victories. And that could have easily been 9 had the Young Boys game not been a dead rubber. So Manchester United have been far from convincing, but my understanding is that within the dressing room, there was a big lift after that 93rd minute goal from Marcus Rashford on Saturday, maybe because 8 of the players were on the way to Dubai for 5 days straight after the game, that they were more happy than they might have been. But yeah, it's picked up a bit, but I still think a lot of United fans are circumspect and with good reason. I still think this has been a pretty underwhelming season. Manchester City have disappeared into the distance. But United are in the top 4. I think a top 4 finish, given everything that's gone on, would be a relative success. There's still the Champions League. I think if the team can get a run of winning games together, and you've got to look at United's next opponents, Middlesbrough, Burnley, 2 more victories there, then suddenly it's 4 wins. And let's see what can come from that, because I get very mixed messages about what's going on behind the scenes, but I was told after the weekend that really gave the players a lift.
Well, one of the reasons for the circumspection of the fans is that the media is flooded with tales of woe from behind the dressing room, nameless sources. We don't like Rangnick. I've heard, we've read everything from he screams too loudly at us to the tactical coaching isn't up to scratch, and whatever else you're having. I mean, flooded for the last couple of weeks. You mentioned mixed messages there, Andy. Give us the full spectrum of what you're hearing.
Well, if you've got 25 different people, they're going to have 25 different opinions. So someone who's not getting in the team and not getting selected is far more inclined to go and moan to their agent, who may then speak to journalists, rather than someone who is quite happy that he's been selected, that he's playing. So there isn't one view which you can say for absolutely everybody. I speak to lots of different people. I hear good and bad. As a journalist, my job is to find the truth. In football, there's often more than one version of the truth, and people change their opinions as well. So I know someone who was saying that get Rangnick in, it's a no-brainer, has now changed that opinion. And
on what basis?
I know other people whose noses have been put out of joint because they were very loyal to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And from the players' perspective, there's changes to the way that they're training. But again, wins smother everything. So had you asked me a week ago, it would have been different to now.
Okay. And so when somebody has changed their opinion from get Rangnick in to no, let's not get him in, could you give us any specifics or any examples of what the complaints over Rangnick might be?
I've heard complaints over the changes in the people who are training the players. So it wasn't a popular opinion when I wrote this, because it was associated with the perceived failure of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But when Michael Carrick and Martin Pert and Kieran McKenna left, you had the three principal people who'd been taking training leave the club. And then you had new trainers come in. They've got the new methods. Some players like those methods. Some players don't like those methods. And various opinions would seep out according to whatever those particular viewpoints are. So as I said, some noses have been put out of joint. I find that in football, when everything's going well, there's a lot of people trying to claim that success. And when it's not, there's a lot of people looking to apportion blame. And then what you also have is players who want to leave the club. Now, they're hardly going to be singing praises because they're not happy. That's why they want to leave the club. Anthony Martial is going to go to Sevilla. Probably good for him, probably good for Sevilla, and probably good for Manchester United if he gets some minutes and plays well, which he's clearly got the potential to do so. But I think fans can see with their own eyes that performances on the pitch have been less than convincing. The formation has been changed from game to game, but it seems in the last couple of matches that Ralph Rangnick has settled on the 4-2-3-1 system, which probably served his predecessor best. As I understand it, that's one the players feel more comfortable with. But he's also had quite a forgiving run of fixtures from when he came into the job. He's got a few more of them, and then it turns into the end of February and March when you have Manchester City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Atletico Madrid, etc. So the last week has been a good one for Manchester United, but I've not met any fans who are getting too carried away just yet.
Yeah. And on the training, just as a matter of interest, so Rangnick, the godfather of pressing, I had held an assumption that he might get in there and work them harder in training, for instance. So I don't know, is that the complaint, or what is it about his methods? Because I'm not saying it's all homogenised, but in the modern world where communication is so quick and easy, I would think what most Premier League clubs are doing at training is not, totally incomparable. I'd say it's of a similar vein in terms of many aspects. So what is it about Rangnick's training that some, and I emphasise some, but some players are raising eyebrows over?
Some of them just prefer how it was. I'm not going to give specific examples of what some of them like or don't like. I'm just giving a general flavour of the feedback that I get from what I hear of people behind the scenes at Carrington.
Okay, fair enough. On the formation point, the 4-2-3-1, as you mentioned, seems to be back in vogue. I mean, again, like, it feels like, especially if Pogba comes back, and where do you fit him into either the two midfielders or further on, that never quite clicked either. It's almost feels like, well, this is about the best of an average bunch.
Yeah, I think that Ralph Rangnick has been very honest when he's answered questions about people like Paul Pogba. I think he's quite pragmatic. I think that Paul Pogba may well run his contract down at Manchester United and then may well leave the club. And a lot of fans would say good riddance to that. Yeah. From his perspective, he's likely to be leaving the club at the end of the season anyway. So he's just going to use the players he thinks are going to win football matches. If he gets in the top four, he gets a big bonus. So do all of his players. My understanding is that while a lot of the players have gone to Dubai, some of them who are coming back from injury may feature in a game behind closed doors this week to get them some minutes. So I think that Ralph Rangnick will choose the best team because he's not got a history with the players maybe that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has had. He won't be accused of breaking promises. Some of the players felt that what they'd spoke about with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the start of the season didn't end up being the reality, i.e. they didn't get the number of minutes that they would hope for. So players are always going to see it from their own perspective. With Pogba, we could talk about him for 10 hours. He could come back and have a brilliant run of games, or he could get injured again. We just don't know what we're gonna see with him. But what we have seen is an upturn in the form of Bruno Fernandes. He likes that 4-2-3-1. Diogo Dalot's been good. Right back, David De Gea's been excellent. Rafael Varane's looking like a really good defender. Harry Maguire, who's had a poor season, had a good game at the weekend. Marcus Rashford scored 2 in 2. He's another player who's had a pretty poor season as well. So there are some shoots of recovery, but I don't think any United fans are getting too carried away just yet. But it was a good weekend because City didn't win. Other teams dropped points as well. But there needs to be a proper run together to get Manchester United into the top four and maybe have a good run in the Cup as well. A Cup win this season would also be a success. A trophy would be a success. United have not won anything since 2017. Yeah.
Feel free with any of these next few questions to say, I don't know. But I'm just going to throw them at you anyway because I'm sure the Manchester United fans would like me to. On Rashford, the drop-off has been so severe until the last week or two. Do you know what's been going on there, off the field, on the field? What's the story? With Rashford, I see what I see. I don't see him playing well. I don't have any specifics about why his form may have dropped. I know there was an injury issue, but he's been massively underwhelming. Fans have talked. There's a lot of conjecture around Marcus Rashford. When he's not playing well, that rises and dips. People accuse him of being too focused on what goes on off the field. I think that's a little bit unfair. Again, I hear mixed things about Marcus Rashford. I'm not sure whether he'll have a long-term future at Manchester United, but in a best-case scenario, I absolutely think that he's a United fan and he'd love to be playing well for a United team that are doing well. I think if he's not in the team, then frustration levels start to rise and you start to hear more frustration about him. Right, okay. Jadon Sancho, in some respects, has been the great disappointment of the season. Arrived to so much fanfare. His stats from Borussia Dortmund are incredible. I mean, he's in the England squad. Admittedly, didn't get much game time in the Euros, but there must be a lot of talk about what's happened here. Are they surprised? Do they know what's going on? I mean, is he not what they thought he was? Because that's a lot of money to spend on somebody who sees very few minutes. It's a huge amount of money and he's been poor. Fans invested a lot of hope in him. They were really excited. They'd seen footage of him. They saw his age profile. They know that United had coveted him for a long time, but he's been a huge disappointment. Now, he'll be given time. Other players have had poor first seasons. Ralph Rangnick, when asked about him a couple of weeks ago, talked about the mental side of it being difficult for him. So that's his manager talking there. With the fans, he was coming into a little bit of form under when Michael Carrick was in charge, but he's lost his place in the side. So I know what's happened with Anthony Elanga, and
he's been the success of the last few weeks. 19 years old, made a really good impression from the very first training session. I know that he's considered to be faster than Jadon Sancho and Mason Greenwood, and he takes on instruction from the manager, who likes to trust players who he believes will follow out his instructions. It's one reason that he trusts Cavani, Fred, Scott McTominay, and Elanga is seen as aggressive, has been very direct. And because Marcus Rashford has not been great, and because Jadon Sancho has not been great, there's a pathway into the side for him, and he's taken his chances. He played really well at Villa and Brentford, less so against West Ham. Although the United players collectively feel that they didn't play brilliantly against West Ham. They also thought West Ham would be stronger, and they were also surprised that West Ham left themselves so open, leading to Marcus Rashford's equaliser. That could be a big boost for Rashford. That it involved Cavani as well, and Anthony Martial, the free substitutes. It was good, and the atmosphere was really good at the weekend. Elanga had a song sung about him to the tune of Rhythm is a Dancer. He was absolutely buzzing off that. He's a kid living the dream. It's quite nice to not see maybe the scepticism, cynicism of some of the older players. But Sancho, I mean, no one's going to be getting rid of him. He's signed a huge contract. I don't think his talent has just disappeared, but it seems to me that his confidence level is a lot lower than it should be, and his form is not justifying him starting in the team. It's a great shame. There's a parallel with Memphis Depay. You know, he came in, everyone was really hopeful that he'd do well. I spoke to people in Holland, just as we spoke to people in Germany who'd been watching Jadon Sancho all the time, and it's just been really disappointing this season. And he's not the only one. Yeah. That's why Manchester United was 7th up until the weekend.
Yeah, you hear contrasting things on Sancho. So Damien Delaney, former Crystal Palace player, is a great analyst, and he's on with us, and it's his contention that Sancho was used to and thrived on intricate coaching and detail at Dortmund. When the ball is here, you go there. When this happens, that's your trigger to do this. This is how Sancho blossomed, and that doesn't seem to have been the Solskjaer way, and I'm not sure what he's getting from Rangnick, and so he's a bit lost. But then I suppose maybe more worryingly, because that's just a coaching issue, more worryingly, someone like Jamie Redknapp. Every time I see Redknapp do coverage of United at the moment, he makes the point that he's not seeing any top-end speed from Sancho. There's no ability to go by anyone. And, you know, if you're not at that, then things are tricky. So we'll see how that goes. You jogged my memory by mentioning Elanga's pace being greater than Sancho's there. One other one, I don't even know to what extent United fans are that upset or otherwise. It's Lingard. He'll be one of those players who thought he was going to get more minutes this season. We haven't seen him. Newcastle seem to be very interested. I wouldn't be shocked if Jesse Lingard was a slightly disaffected character at the moment and wondering why he came back.
I think it would be fair from Jesse's point of view if he felt that way. He left United a year ago. He went to West Ham. He did brilliantly there. He came back this season. It was his understanding that he would be featuring more prominently this season for Manchester United. It hasn't happened. He's been reduced to snatches. He's come on and done all right in some of the games. So I wouldn't be surprised if he felt very disappointed with how things have panned out for him, nor if he left the club to go on loan somewhere else for this season. And it's not a happy tale. His contract is running down, and as he showed at West Ham, he's clearly someone who can be a star in a team at the top end of the Premier League. And he's another one who's had a real roller coaster career at Manchester United. I can remember a couple of years ago, why aren't you being more critical of Lingard? He's a disgrace. He's got to go. And then he comes back into favour by doing well, and he's had some good times at United. But yeah, he's not going to be one of the players who's delighted. And another problem is that clubs like to stockpile players, partly because they don't want them to go to a rival. So it's all right for Anthony Martial to go to Sevilla and to pay his wages. But if Jesse Lingard was to go to a direct rival, and let's be honest, someone like West Ham or Tottenham, they are a rival for Manchester United at the moment. That's Manchester United's level at the moment. That would be a threat as well. So there's always going to be unhappy players at any club, more so if the team's losing, more so if there's injuries. There's no shortage of them among some of the United players, but there are also some players who are, I know that Diogo Dalot, for example, feels that this is his best moment at Manchester United. The same for Raphael Varane. So we can talk about the negatives, but there are some positives as well.
Last one for you, Andy, and it's last but not least. Is Ronaldo a happy camper?
I don't know him personally, and I feel that I could argue both sides of him being good and bad for United pretty strongly. So I get all of this information given to me from what I would consider to be very good sources I've spent 30 years building up, people who I think are worth listening to. And I hear that United didn't have a clue that he was coming, and suddenly he comes in, so the tactics have got to be changed. And then I was in Bergamo when he scored. I was at Old Trafford when he scored against Villarreal, against Atalanta. Without his goals, I wouldn't be mentioning Atletico Madrid, Manchester United. And his statistics are still quite good. I hear some players really look up to him. I hear other players less so. So it's an issue which is going to go on and on and on.
Not least because Rangnick's not afraid to take him off, and we saw the conversation on the bench at Brentford. So is he happy? Is he enjoying his time at United? I wonder is an interesting question with Ronaldo.
Well, I don't think he expected United to be 7th in the league.
No.
I think he expected United to be challenging for the title. I'm glad that Rangnick felt big enough to bring him off, and B, that Ronaldo wasn't happy with being brought off. Wasn't a good look when the camera's focused in on it, but so what? He's not the first footballer who's angry when he comes off. The main thing is that he trained well the next day, which I'm told that he did. And from his perspective, I was told that United had a 2-0 lead against Villa a few days earlier and needed experienced players on the pitch to see out that lead, and failed to do that. So there was a case for keeping him on at Brentford. As it happened, the substitution was vindicated. Once again, there's two versions of the truth in football.
27 years ago, by the way, on this very evening, you were aghast like everyone else, and it was just the most remarkable moment. Were you there?
I was there, and it was a pre-internet age, and I just remember my phone being red hot for like a month afterwards. I was in London, I saw it. I didn't realise the significance of it. I went to a pub close to Sellers Park after the game, saw it again on TV and thought, whoa. And then the next morning, because I was doing a month's work placement at the Independent, so I was living in London for a month, my phone just did not stop and stop and stop. It was mental. And then a few years later, I drove to Marseille to interview Eric Cantona, and